It is my pleasure today to share with you part two of our study in alchemy, inspired by Saint Germain's teaching on alchemy. Now, today we explore deeper into what it takes to awaken the divine scientist within. We live in a world that brims with potential, a world where the veil between the material and the spiritual is thinner than it seems. The ancient science of alchemy, once thought to be only about the transmutation of base metals into gold, holds within it a deeper mystical truth, the transformation of the self. Now, this inner alchemy, as taught by beloved Saint Germain in his 1962 Studies in Alchemy, invites us into a sacred process of remembrance, renewal, and revitalization, and also realization. Now, through his teachings, and today our focus is going to be on chapters 4, 5, and 6 of his book, Studies in Alchemy, we are given a spiritual blueprint. Each chapter is like a stage in the alchemist's laboratory, where faith, choice, and the reshaping of consciousness serve as our sacred tools. Now, when we pair these insights with timeless truths from scripture, from the Bhagavad Gita, and also other sacred traditions, a universal message emerges. We are each vessels of transformation, called to embody divine light. So we're going to start out with chapter 4. And the title of chapter 4 is Dare to Do. In this chapter, Saint Germain goes through studies in alchemy and he specifically focuses on faith. So what I'm going to do in our lesson today is I'm going to read each chapter and then we'll give a short summary of my insights into what Saint Germain is teaching us there. So we start out with chapter 4, Dare to Do. And Saint Germain starts out and he says, versatility. I am eternally grateful for that many splendid quality of creation. The universe is fragmented. It is spread apart from a center of oneness to a diversity of light, color, tone, and density. Each partaker of a scene where pastoral or of transitory ugliness ought to remember that the splintered shafts of light rays that compose the swaddling garments of all of creation connect directly with the great source and fountainhead of cosmic unity. In my historical experiences preceding my ascension, which was identical in its raising action to the elevation of Jesus the Christ, I was in a constant state of listening grace, whereby my inner ears and eyes were fixed upon a lovely realm of light and perfection, which served to remove the sting of earthly life from my consciousness, producing a comfort that my friends did not perceive. They often pondered the cause of my inner serenity without understanding its origin. The contacts with my earthly brethren, and the appearances that I have made since my ascension have not always been under circumstances where those I met were aware of either my identity or my power. May I humbly state that as in other similar cases where one of the ascended host has elected to part the veil of matter and Maya to contact directly unascended humanity, the latter have entertained angels unawares. I am well aware that some of my readers may opine, inasmuch as I am one who has passed through the veil, that this release of my words is of a psychic or spiritualistic let's try that again. That this release of my words is of a psychic or spiritualistic nature. Let me quickly affirm that it is neither. God be praised that my own live stream need not subscribe to such limiting forms. The fact that we are expressing or vibrating our life in higher dimensions where ordinary human faculties of seeing and hearing do not function renders neither our service nor our reality of any less effect, nor does it force me to subscribe to the above-named methods of communication. Blessed ones, you do not by ordinary means perceive radio waves, for they remain inaudible until detected in the miracle of the electronic tube. Thereby, trust in heaven's capacity to communicate with man directly. Because of my dedication to the holy cause of freedom, I have since my ascension consistently maintained a contact with one or more life streams embodied upon earth, and that by cosmic decree and with the approval of the heavenly hierarchy, beloved Jesus and other great luminaries who have descended in the fullness of the divine plan have likewise appeared to their disciples down through the ages and do occasionally manifest to men and women of today with no more effort than that employed to dial a radio or television. My purpose in discussing the subject of heaven's winged messages from the great cloud of witnesses is not as foreign to alchemy as might at first appear, for it portrays to you a necessary part of my program in the cause of freedom, of which the current series in alchemy is an integral part. You see, blessed ones, the creation of the visible is wholly dependent upon those essences which are not visible to the unaided eye. Yet, the central ideas occupying the minds of most people, originating as they do in the transient effects of human causation, are not of enough consequence to deserve comment or to be ordained with permanent reality. I am certain you will agree that even as the range of ordinary human experience becomes monotonous for souls, both great and small, so it is a wonderful blessing to them to be able to see into the higher octaves of creation by means of an adjusted consciousness, and thus draw inspiration directly from the mind of nature and nature's God. Ignorance, with its defilement of the law, deprives the individual and society of enlightenment. The only cure is illumined obedience, together with scientific attentiveness to the detail of the law. The benefits of divine wisdom remain unknown to many who suppose that the old familiar theories are adequate to meet the demands of the hour, and that nothing beyond empiricism or the empirical method is required. Actually, the accepted tenets of modern science, being but partially true, are incomplete and therefore provide an inadequate foundation upon which to base advanced research and the control of the elements. An attitude of complacency does not allow for progress in any endeavor, human or divine. Thus, where grace might abound, it does not. Complacency remains a bulwark of reactive ignorance, preventing mankind from sharing in the abundance which all heaven stands waiting to shower upon those free souls whose purity of heart and guileless nature make most receptive to our thoughts. Before conferring alchemical knowledge of any depth upon you, I wish to exalt you into that divine nobility which is as real as the light of the day and your greatest strength in meeting the challenges of the morrow. To do this may require some examination of the spirit of those sincere alchemists whose excursions into the unknown were productive in more ways than one. Even the souls who failed completely to discover a method of changing base metals into gold were benefited beyond their farthest dreams by the blessings which came to them as a result of their search. Even the persecutions served to band them together in singleness of purpose, which midst human diversity with its unfortunate tendencies toward greed and selfishness is an achievement in itself. I am in the hope that you will prepare yourself to succeed in your endeavors. Above all, stand ready to make the necessary changes in your thoughts and preconceived ideas that will make it possible for you to be victorious. If man expects to succeed in alchemy, which is in truth dependent on the higher laws of spiritual science, he must nurture the faith on which the strength of his invocation and concentration will rest. The fusion of metal, the control of atomic forces, and the direction of electronic energy by the mind of man acting in higher dimensions are easy enough once the grasp is acquired. However, after years of dependence upon the five senses and the attendant acceptance of mortal limitation, I am certain you can see how utterly important it is that your thinking become geared to new possibilities in order to function free of human restrictions and the dampening of a divine ardor by those who say, because they do not know, impossible. Let me say to all in freedom's name, try. While you are preparing your consciousness for the reception of the knowledge of tomorrow, be aware then of the need to ponder the origin of concepts involving limitation. Beloved ones, you must be sane and balanced in all you do, but realize that true science borders on the miraculous to those who do not understand its formulas. You approach a solid wall with the idea that you cannot walk through it. Yet it is not solid at all, but as full of holes as the wire of a chicken coop. You cannot walk upon hot coals without burning your feet. And yet, medicine men of a less illumined culture than your own do so with impunity. Countless miracles of Christ have been duplicated by men and women of various times and climes since his wondrous advent. And yet, because of human skepticism and forgetfulness, the wonder of it all has been relegated to the realm of myth or the imaginings of gullible minds. Let me plead for a renewal of faith in the power of God, for this is a requirement for everyone who would be a wonder man of spiritual accomplishment on behalf of the holy purposes of the universal law itself. Without faith, it is not only impossible to please God, but I declare unto you, it is impossible to manifest the perfection of his laws. As faith is so great a requirement, would it not pay well for each one to re-examine his reasons to doubt? Note well that most doubts arise from patterns of self-deception and the practice of deceit and the failures of the human mind to fulfill its professed integrity. Seeing then that such negative conditions stem from the consciousness of error, would it not be ever so wise for all to look unto me, the presence of Almighty God, and live? With God, all things are possible. But as in every science, proficiency does not usually come about without knowledge and its persistent application. The few who are exceptions to this rule may be called geniuses. But when the whole law is understood, it will be proven that even they that had their hours of diligent study and practice I particularly want to point out that the purpose of our release of alchemical secrets in this course is to place in your hands and in the laboratory of your consciousness the knowledge of the law, which we ourselves have used for centuries with the greatest success and with the reverence for life which is of prime necessity to an inquiring mind poised on the loving intent of an honest heart. Here, idle curiosity is exchanged for that moral grandeur which so lifts a man above his fellows as to make of him a divine star in the firmament of his contemporaries. Lifted then by no false pride or intellectual misinterpretation, the true alchemist stands with humble mien, gazing expectantly at the teacher who will impart to him, if the attitude and the application be correct, the priceless knowledge of the ages. May I fondly hope that you will reread the early lessons and assimilate therefrom a new sense of progress and of new possibilities. I am determined that many in this class shall succeed, and I shall continue to do my part above and below in your octave, that this prove true, and that great illumination, hope, peace, and understanding be born and renewed within you all. I am faithfully yours, Saint Germain. So Saint Germain opens chapter 4 with a call that is both empowering and challenging. Dare to do. Faith, he argues, is not just belief. It is the magnetic core of divine manifestation. Without faith, it is not only impossible to please God, he says, and this echoes what is written in Hebrews 11, verse 6. It is impossible to manifest the perfection of his laws without faith. The faithful mind becomes the womb of miracles. In Matthew chapter 19, verse 26, Jesus reminds us, with God, all things are possible, and that echoes Saint Germain's words. This is not a suggestion, it is a spiritual law. Saint Germain insists we dismantle our limiting beliefs that imprison the soul and instead nurture the faith on which the strength of your invocation and concentration will rest. This teaching of Saint Germain, and also from beloved Jesus, harmonizes what is written in the Bhagavad Gita. And in the Bhagavad Gita it says, "Let a man lift himself by his own self alone. Let him not lower himself." Alchemy, in this sense, begins in consciousness. Miracles are not fantasies, but lawful outcomes of divine alignment. We are not waiting for magic. We are cultivating receptivity to divine principles. Now, I want to go just for a moment to Hebrews 11, and the title that's given to Hebrews 11 is Faith in Action. In Hebrews 11, verses 1 through 3, it says, "Now faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. This is what the ancients were commended for. By faith we understand that the universe was formed at God's command, so that what is seen was not made out of what was visible." And in this chapter, Hebrews reminds us of the faith of Abel, of Enoch, of Noah, and of Abraham. So the call to action that I would send out here is, let us re-examine our doubts. Why do we have doubts? And where do those doubts stem from? See them not as enemies, but as invitations to cultivate higher thought. Your mind is your laboratory. Fill it with divine potential. And now, as we get ready to go to chapter 5 of Saint Germain's teaching, the chapter 5 is titled The Need, Power, and Motive of Change, Choosing to Transform. So I'm going to read chapter 5 to you, and then we'll go to a summary of it again. And chapter 5, as I said, title is The Need, Power, and Motive of Change. And Saint Germain says, the now of the present hour must be utilized as a chalice of spiritual opportunity. Life must be indulged by its highest objectives, honored by the adoration and exalting principles, and merited by selfless service. Beloved people, the power to change is within every man. Prefer this power and venerate it above every limiting condition, and watch the alchemy of self expand. And the alchemy of self here is a capital S. Transmute the lies of shadowed substance that arrest your spirit's upward soaring. Realize that conditions of human limitation are but ghosts that parade upon the stage of mortal existence, only to be laid to rest forever by eternal reality. Each man must become aware of his choices and select either freedom or fetters as he explores the chemistry of his present state, brings it into focus upon the mirror of truth, and then determines to alter each base condition, constructing within the crucible of the hour that hallowed progress which is born of eternal perception. Destruct then the base and senseless mania of your origin in matter consciousness, that possessive nature, the perversion of the mother, which failing to assess the fullness of cosmic possibilities, limits itself to the baubles and trinkets of temporal possession. Let heaven use your consciousness to expand its window into the infinite. And then behold at last the beautiful possibilities present in the most dire outer conditions. Give wealth to the poor in spirit, understanding to the rich, and compassion to everyone. So often a life stream may have in abundance the very qualities in which his neighbor is lacking. Exchange your virtues by exalting the valleys of another, and trust life to remove the peaks of his pride as well as your own. Transmute the conditions in your own world that you do not want by determined and persistent effort. Every divine being who exalts the life of God within you knows that the power to do these things is in your hands this very day, within the reach of your intelligence and spirit. Construct those spires of attainment which compose the celestial city, and enfold the world of physical substance, the conscious mind, and the feelings of your heart with the radiance of immortal spheres. Gazing at the universe with renewed hope, behold the need to sustain proper regard. Vanity has held sway upon earth far too long. Wondrous opportunities, like spirits in the night, have vanished with the dawn, resisted by the cold shackles that imprison the soul in a mantle of disintegrating moments descending in the glass of the hours. The son of Elizabeth inquired of the Christ, art thou he that should come, or look we for another? The reply of the Christ referred to his miraculous accomplishments. The deaf were made to hear, the blind to see, and the lame to walk. The lesson contained in his answer urges each life stream to accept the greatness of his own reality. All should see that life has brought to them its great and wondrous graces through the I am He consciousness, which must emerge from the cave of materiality. The gross separation of the whole into weak and incomplete components, men's conception of themselves as particles remote from the source, obliges their struggle through human misfortune instead of their acceptance of the grandiose concept of cooperative ones charged with the power of love and freedom, unbounded. Truth raises all and defeats no one save those enemies of righteousness whose shadowed misunderstanding makes them little more than savage animals in the jungle of human creation. Even these are given more compassion by life than they deserve. This I know because the record is laid before me. Beloved Kuan Yin has called for mercy and given it freely to all without limit and without price. This is God's great gift. He always returns more love to life than life ever gives to him. Selflessly, the magnitude of God sends forth a torrent of love when a few droplets would suffice, and therefore thereby sweeps mankind on the upward pilgrim way, regardless of man's erroneous notions. Now, looking to another is not the solution to your problems, nor will it win the intended fulfillment God holds for thee, blessed Son of Man. As an alchemist enlightened by the torch of divine knowledge, aware of the magnificence of true selfhood, you must summon the strength from the invisible realm and the use of processes of transmutative alchemy within your own world and affairs to master daily all outer conditions by the spiritual means and physical opportunities available to you. To make bricks without straw may not always be a requirement and may seem most difficult, but to be determined or the determined alchemist, it is merely an obstacle to be overcome. No one who occupies the earth at present should limit his recognition of now is the hour concept, which mounts each wave of opposition and rides it forward into the crest of victory. Everyone should see his life at any age or time as amenable to change for the better, and himself as possessing the capability to surmount any condition at will. Law and justice are natural factors of control, but the universe, guided by its own law, has the creative methods of transcending that law, approximating cosmic dimensions and expanding geometrically into infinity. Friends of freedom must disallow old ideas as quickly as they are able and discard outworn concepts as outmoded garments. It was difficult for men to accept that the world was round in Columbus's day. They dogmatically subscribed to the theory that the earth was flat. Chemical formulas of basic and complex matter are simple to the chemist, but to the unlearned seem but a jumble of symbols. Our purpose in this course is not merely to confer knowledge, but to effect your acceptance of that knowledge by an almost a priori knowledge methodology. This is needed because the categorical proof of alchemical laws is universally and necessarily seen through their action in man. Let there be light within your personal orbit and within the sphere of your being. Life is not an experiment, but mankind have experimented with it. Humanity has ridden the tide of the peripheral world of effects while neglecting the inner causative realm. All unhappiness is rooted in basic factors of cause. Mend the flaws, and you shall be self-healed and self-revealed. I am interested in bringing about a complete reversal of deleterious human attitudes and replacing them by such right methods and concepts that each life can quickly rise out of the human force field with its heavy gravitational magnetism that hinders mankind's progressive ascension. By transmutation, let every would-be alchemist first act to transform himself here and now, and gain thereby an inner peace and a sense of outer accomplishment, especially at the close of each life's term. Surely, unless both an interior and an exterior focus be maintained where good is accented, one's concentration of positive control, which has the power to alter substance within and without, cannot manifest the blessing God intends all to have and exercise each day. Beloved ones, a life lived for reward or punishment is not a raison d'être. The destiny inherent within life has escaped the intelligent comprehension of many on earth and is anchored in but a few. Thousands daily take pleasure in the sweepstakes, the races, or games of chance, hoping against fantastic odds to become a winner, whilst they ignore the most certain of all laws, the cosmic purpose. Those who deny God or life itself do so out of a dearth of genuine experience. They have not witnessed the dawn of pure reason in themselves. They prefer to accept those unpopular ideas associated with non-gullibility. Well, the losses of such as these are legion. And while I do not expect to change every such individual, I do repeat my admonishment here that all might be inspired to keep on keeping on. The search is worth all the effort. I know the law, the alchemy of action is its own proof. Those who desire to enter into debate to prove the non-existence or the non-essentiality of a first cause may not wish to lose the transient pleasure of so doing. But if they accede to the divine logic, the golden grain of truth will replace the husks of pride in the stifling, airtight systems of the human intellect, which disdains the verification of any knowledge not experienced by the physical senses. Frequently, individuals like to think they are en rapport with hoary heads of wisdom. Now, I think that the centuries I lived before my ascension and those which have since transpired have entitled me to some distinction in this respect. Neither ego nor human motive would inspire me to write the series. I am aware only of the deep love I feel for the earth as a unit of cosmic progress, and I desire to impart herein something of the sweet simplicity of that love and the wisdom that is guided thereby. Let us see now how reasonable it is to suppose that enough people serving in harmony can change the most calcified condition and create an influx of love that will sweep the hills and valleys of an inspired movement to heal the breach between the realities of eternal alchemy, the alchemistry of God, and the artificialities which rise from the caves of base error. Then the emerging gold of personal integrity and personal integration will be a gift equally shared by all. Individual man will reflect pure genius, and the social order will reflect the kingdom of heaven. The forces that would bind mankind to their past errors and thus prevent the flame of peace from being released in the present must themselves be bound as in heaven, so on earth. And mankind must arise to sound the death knell of these forces here and now, ere war shall cease. Freedom from confusion can be found only in the true understanding of life and the alchemy of being. Step by step, I am leading you to the right understanding of alchemy, In the first lessons, I reminded you of responsibility, your responsibility to prove the law of your being by the right use of alchemy. Now I am reminding you of the need to effect changes in yourself where change is desirable. Finally, I shall instruct you in the art and practice of precipitation. A prerequisite to applying the methods of precipitation is knowing that what you want to precipitate. It was this which Jesus taught in the Lord's Prayer, and when he said, "Nevertheless, not my will but thine be done." The will of God, the will of the higher, is the will of your real self, the most important part of you, because the lesser you, although it retains through the soul the capacity to contact this higher self, is but a bundle of impulses crowded with bits of human knowledge. I am advocating that you become acquainted with the reality of yourself. For this reality is the genie, the genius in you that can give you the Aladdin, symbolizing the alchemist who rubs the lamp of pure knowledge, the right desires of his immortal being. Ponder now the need to change. Thine is the kingdom, the power to change. Thine is the power and the motive to change. Thine is the glory, and evolve out of the passing flame of earnestness the permanent sun of renewed hope. Graciously I am, Saint Germain. And what a wonderful teaching and lesson from beloved Saint Germain. So here in chapter 5, Saint Germain emphasizes the transformative trinity of change: need, power, and motive. Each element is vital to spiritual progress. The need arises from our recognition of limitation. The power lies dormant within, waiting for invocation. The motive aligns us with divine service and the good of all life. And then, as Saint Germain quoted from the Lord's Prayer, "Thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory." Saint Germain invites us to internalize divine sovereignty. He echoes Paul's mandate in Romans chapter 12, verse 2, "Be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind." And then we read in the Bhagavad Gita, "Be by self alone one must," let me try that again. In the Bhagavad Gita, we read, "By self alone must one lift oneself." Transformation, therefore, is a choice. It is the ongoing decision to align with the divine blueprint. In Deuteronomy chapter 30, verse 19, God pleads with his people, choose life. Saint Germain underscores this freedom of choice when he declares each man must select either freedom or fetters. So become a conscious alchemist. Recognize the subtle powers within you. Use your voice in prayer, your mind in visualization, and your heart in selfless service. These are the true elements of sacred change. Now, as we prepare to go to chapter 6, and I'm going to read portions of chapter 6, just in light of our timing. In chapter 6, Saint Germain talks about molding factors. And this is molding, molding factors, where we're purifying the vessel. So let's take a look at what Saint Germain says in chapter 6. And by the way, this is in volume 5, number 31, if you don't have the book. So I'm going to extract some of the reading from this chapter. Saint Germain starts out and he says, "Oh, the mold, there's the rub, A and the mold." And the spelling of these two, by the way, are different. Mold, oh, the mold is M-O-L-D, sorry, M-O-L-D. And then he talks of the mold, which is M-O-W-L-D-E, the archaic form of mold. And he says, oh, the mold, there's the rub, A, and the mold, two, contaminates. But how beautiful is the original hope of heaven for each live stream. Following the descent into form and material substance come those formative years when the pressures, both clamorous and silent, make their impression upon the clean white consciousness of the individual. Beginning with the first fond gawking of parents and kin, there is a gradual buildup of environmental factors which serve to create patterns and concepts upon the tender screen of the embryonic mind. These molding factors continue to exert their multifarious influence upon the plastic personality of man. That selfhood, then, which is first identified wholly with God good, is affected and shaped by myriad experience patterns. Thus does example for woe or for weal sculpt the mind and being of man. Experience is not, however, the sole way to expand consciousness. For each moment spent with God or one of his cosmic band servers serves to exalt and broaden individual consciousness, conveying illumination on the instant in the twinkling of an eye. The empirical proof of human imperfection is epitomized in past, present lives of mass humanity. Life in bondage and life in peril decries the meaning of existence. Religion and hope for salvation arise in the human heart and burgeon from the human tree. And he looked up and he said, I see men as trees walking. And this is an excerpt from when Jesus healed the blind man and he saw for the first time. Saint Germain continues, he says, the alchemy of change was needed in Jesus' day and is still needed because all too frequently the mold is imperfect and the product cannot excel its matrix. I have declared that the mold too contaminates, and thus I direct your attention to the untransmuted accumulation of human filth and misery, which, like trash, litters the sidewalks of human consciousness, wrecking and reeking forth from the literally stalls of the world. The crusty mold masquerades as legitimate culture while undermining the decency of lusty souls. Freedom of the press was not intended to give license to the corrupters of youthful minds. Neither was it intended to be used to confuse and disorganize the populace, flooding their brains with jingoistic propaganda and prejudicial discrimination. Rather, the power of light was intended to emanate from a free press and exalt everyone into a rightful sense of cosmic destiny. America, my beloved country, how precious are the footsteps of your heroes, sung and unsung. But every mother's heart can take a just pride in offering what the consent of the governed, the fruit of her life, sons and daughters of excellence who from the heart of this beloved nation serve the cause of freedom across the earth. Because each dire effect of the mold and the mold must be counteracted, I am releasing these remarks pertaining to personal freedom through the correct use of alchemy. I do not say that more will not be spoken on the subject to parallel and conclude the course, but herein is my specific advice to those who would use alchemy to further their own personal advancement in the divine plan fulfilled and thus change their present circumstances for the better. Those who are familiar with the process of refining precious metals are aware of the intense heat needed to liquefy many metals. Heat is also necessary to release impurities and foreign material from the pure metal. Separation of the dross occurs in two ways. Number one, a portion is vaporized and passes into the very atmosphere of the room wherein the refining furnace is operating. And number two, much of this unwanted substance is brought to the surface and skimmed off by the alert refiner. Apropos of this, few parents exist who are equipped with the type of instruction which would enable their children to know from the beginning the tenets of their full freedom. I do not say that the world is not full of aspiration and good intentions, but the highways so paved do not seem to lead to the best places. Thus it happens that the children of world become wiser in each succeeding generation in the arts and artifices of war, and in the many customs of all society, without ever becoming too stirred with the regenerate and peaceful society of saints. In the main, few are born and come to years with a right understanding of the universal purpose, and of necessity personal destinies, which often run cross-current to the universal flow, are periodically thwarted and broken. The pages of history are full of downfall of tyrants and the overthrow of monsters of misdirected purpose. Failures and successes in many fields draw recognition, while the average man moves into the burial ground of mediocrity. Nothing is further from the plan of God and nature than these counterfolds of the golden mean. How ill-equipped is the concept of a destiny which can be shaped by human misconceptions. How noble are they who acknowledge an intellect, a mind, a spiritual overseer, and a creator whose forethought, greater even than that of his emissaries, is revealed as a mountain of universal purpose to be scaled by the brave who do not hesitate or fear to trust the wisdom of those early climbers of the rugged summit peaks. Those linked to the lifetime of these spiritual pioneers are given greater guidance, for the elder brothers of the race lovingly extend to them the freedom of the ages as a gift of faith. This gift, extended to all who, by accepting that faith, can likewise summon the will to pursue it and the perseverance to let it fashion them in a mold made purer still, and in an accumulation of that purity whose reality is the treasure of heaven. You must understand the mystery of oneness, whereby a thread of contact between each life and its source serves to connect all who live to one great central switchboard. Here, the interaction of thought and feeling is guarded, lest it hurt any part of life in the holy mountain of God. Consider all the beauty of life which can be. Consider all the beauty of life which can be. Perceive this as pure gold. All causes of unhappiness, every vibration of discord, fear, doubt, suspicion, condemnation, criticism, judgment, self-righteousness, and all negative traits are part of either the human mold or the mold, which must be purged as dross before purity, so regenerate a life stream as to enable the individual to partake of the waters of life freely. It is not enough that men come to drink when the invitation from higher sources has come forth. They must make new skins to retain the new wine of infinite goodness and purpose. This is spiritual alchemy, and wise are they who first master it in themselves before attempting to govern the elements in others or in nature. For thus is karma justified by wisdom and rendered benign. Sin does not come to the door of such a practitioner, for his motives, purpose, and methods are pure, and his acts are also just. Gracious alchemists, the very fact that you are studying this course should denote your interest in improving. In the very word improving is a spiritual lesson to be mastered. The word impression and proving combine here to denote that life brings its impressions to the heart of your consciousness to prove the worth of each impression. Every idle thought is thereby brought to judgment before the magnificent that is the higher glory of God, the upper light in the vaulted chamber of mind. The mind of Christ is synonymous with the mind of light and characterizes one whose attunement is specifically directed to the higher intelligence. The inflow of impressions from the world at large should be directed by the student for comparison and proof to the pure patterns of the purposes of heaven. When these are improved upon by the alchemical fire, they become part of each man's forte of useful objects and ideas, permanent matrices for good, drawing unto the consciousness of man more of their kind. Thus is the kingdom of selfhood expanded on wings of heavenly wisdom, proved day by day by the speech uttered from the hills of spiritual watchfulness. The sincere alchemist knows that the vast intelligence that created all that is expands mighty wings of light over the all of the cosmos. As above in the macrocosm, so below in the microcosm. In the miniaturized world of appearance is this intelligence individualized. The watchful care of God ever manifests to his wondrous purposes as a guardian presence who seeks not the defilement, but the glorious fulfillment of each person in whom dwells the flame of almighty, ever-present life. So-called physical death does not represent the end of being. It merely divides eternal life into compartments of identity and experience whereby expansion and opportunity can be utilized to the fullest and each outworn mold discarded. Forgotten fragments can be pieced together by the seeker and woven strand by strand into a tapestry of such beauty as to thrill the beholder with a sense of gratitude for the perfection and glory present in each day of eternity. I am aware of human discouragement caused by identifying with elements of disintegration in society. I know full well the deceits practiced in the name of religion, but my concern is not so much with these matters as it is with those lives that do emerge from the crucible of experience with a wonderful garment painted with pure gold. Your life need never be vacant, for life watches you and life is intelligent and considerate. Life is tangible and real. Life is earnest and tender. Life is dramatic and moving toward glory. The high road, as distinguished from the low road, is the way of the alchemist, whose heart is in the shining glory all day and all the way that his pilgrim feet walk the dusty ways of man, transmuting, transmuting, transmuting that dust into purest radiance. I am the life, I am the truth, and I am the way. Saint Germain. What another wonderful lesson from our beloved Saint Germain. In chapter 6, we find that Saint Germain shifts our focus to the psychological and energetic conditioning that seems to shape the human being. Saint Germain talks of the mold, M-O-L-D, and MOWLDE. And he says the mold must be purified. These are the inherited patterns, the mental imprints, and the societal influences that quietly determine our responses and beliefs. In the book of Mark, chapter 8:24, a man healed by Jesus says, I see men as trees walking. And we mentioned that earlier as well. His vision is partially restored, but it is still distorted. Likewise, our spiritual perception remains blurry until we are purified through the fires of alchemy. The Apostle Paul implores us in Matthew chapter 9, verse 17, make new skins to retain the new wine. Transformation requires new containers, new thought forms, new identities, new intentions. The Dhammapada also talks about this and says, all that we are is the result of what we have thought. In coaching, we have a saying, pay attention to what you are paying attention to. So let's purify the thoughts that come to us and pay attention to what is flowing through our mind. Saint Germain assures us that true illumination does not require years of suffering, but can occur in the twinkling of an eye. The soul that seeks God becomes the vessel for divine light. Life is dramatic and moving toward glory, Saint Germain said, urging us to surrender old molds and old patterns and let the divine pattern emerge. So the call to action for us here today is, let's identify the shaping forces in our lives. What is it that is shaping our beliefs, our religious affiliation, whatever it may be, our doubts? What beliefs no longer serve our evolution? So invite the fire of divine awareness to melt the mold and let your essence be reshaped. And as we prepare to close our lesson today, I want to go to the first hour of our service today, where we played a dictation by beloved Jesus, in which he spoke of the wedding at Cana, where he performed his first miracle, transforming water into wine. That dictation is titled An Alchemical Blueprint for Union with Spirit. In that dictation, Jesus offers profound insight into the miracle at the wedding at Cana, not only as a historical act of divine intervention, but as a cosmic initiation for humanity. He explains that this first public miracle was not incidental, but intentional. It marked the beginning of his alchemical mission, culminating in the ascension. He said, when I attended that feast with my mother Mary, it was to initiate the spiral of alchemy, the spiral of my mission, and set the pattern for the alchemical union of the soul with the spirit. In this light, we can look at the transmutation of water into wine, which becomes an archetype of the divine marriage, the union of the soul, the feminine aspect of being, with the spirit, the I am presence, that we each have that individualized presence of God that is with us always. Jesus affirms that this miracle demonstrates the mastery of substance and the inner mystery of spiritual union. And this aligns perfectly with Saint Germain's alchemical teachings, where Saint Germain speaks of the mold, M-O-L-D, and mold, M-O-W-L-D-E, those deeply embedded patterns of consciousness requiring purification. Jesus reveals that the soul must come to the wedding feast wearing the wedding garment, a mantle of light woven through prayer, intention, and spiritual discipline. Without this purification, One is like the guest in the parable cast into outer darkness, unprepared for divine union. Now, in Jesus' dictation, he deepens the symbolism, for example, of the stone jars used in the miracle. The best wine, he said, is reserved for the last, the wine of the Holy Spirit, the Holy Communion of the bride and the Christ. The 6 stone jars that are used for Jewish purification rites become metaphysical placeholders for the human condition. Stone represents that which is enduring and dense, the base material in alchemy akin to unrefined human consciousness. Water symbolizes prima materia, our emotional, our mental, and our karmic content that is awaiting transformation. And then the wine, the divine elixir produced by fermentation, spiritual death and rebirth, symbolizing the awakened spirit. In transforming water into wine within these jars, Jesus demonstrates the possibility of transmuting human experience into divine joy. He does not discard the vessels, he uses them, just as God uses the human soul as the crucible for spiritual transformation. The miracle is not simply about wine at a celebration, it is about alchemical fire of love, the wine of the Holy Spirit, being poured into our lives when we are ready to receive it. Saint Germain and Jesus both emphasize the internal nature of this transformation. Saint Germain urges us to recognize and remake the mold of our consciousness. Jesus asks us to prepare for our wedding day by weaving the garment of light through daily communion with God. The message is clear. You are the jar, your soul is the water, and the divine potential within you is the wine yet to be revealed. Transformation does not come through outer miracles alone, but through the daily practice of spiritual alchemy. Jesus said, "Let each one find this bliss and this joy in the alchemical union." And Saint Germain said, "Beloved friends of freedom, you stand now at the gateway to higher alchemical truths." And Jesus concluded that dictation by inviting each disciple to walk the path of initiation so that one day he may perform the sacred wedding, the union of soul and spirit. He said, "I stand ready at the hour when you have passed the necessary initiations to come before you as the priest of the sacred fire to perform the marriage ceremony of the soul with the Spirit of God." This is not symbolic alone. It is mystical and practical. The alchemical wedding is a lived experience of divine presence, accessible through purification, spiritual obedience, and radiant joy. The miracle teaches us that the human vessel is not discarded in spiritual life, it is transformed. Alchemy happens not by rejecting self, by sanctifying it. So let us remember, faith ignites the alchemical fire. Choice initiates the process of transformation. And purification reveals the divine pattern hidden within. Beloved Father, beloved Mother, beloved Saint Germain, we are so grateful for the teachings on alchemy, for awakening within us that knowledge that we are here and that we can transform that which is not of the light into the light of God, and that we can reunite with the Spirit of God, with our own beloved mighty I Am Presence, with our beloved Holy Christ Self, in that transformative process of alchemy. Father, again, we are grateful. We ask for your blessing upon this country, upon America, upon the world, upon every man, woman, and child, and upon this planet. We ask for your blessing to go out to every man, woman, and child, the sons and daughters and the children of God, wherever they may find themselves. And we are grateful that we can be here as thy hands and thy feet to be a part of this in this hour, in this time. In the name of the Father, of the Son, of the Holy Ghost, and of the Divine Mother. Amen and amen.